Hey everybody, Brian here with So Wizard Podcast, here with my review for Captain America Brave New World, the fourth Captain America movie and I can't be right, the 35th, or 35 of these things, 35th movie in the MCU, and the first of three that are coming out this year, which is arguably the most important year for Marvel in recent memory, but we'll get to that in a bit. The MCU tries to return to its political thriller roots that they perfected in Winter Soldier, but sadly falls short based around the same cookie-cutter mistakes that have plagued so many other films from Phase 4 and 5. Made by committee decisions, focus groups, and test screenings that resulted in up to reportedly 4 rounds of reshoots on a 2-hour movie that still drags in places and had some of the worst awkwardly edited around characters, while wrapping up hanging plot threads from a movie that came out the same year I graduated from high school. Set post-Falcon and Winter Soldier, Sam has become world known as Captain America. When the president, now Thunderbolt Ross, calls him in and asks for a simple favor: to work with the government to rebuild the Avengers. Ross, who seems to have turned over a new leaf despite being directly responsible for the Avengers' fracture in Civil War by creating the Sokovia Accords, gets put on a collision course with Sam and new partner Joaquin Torres when an enemy from the past reemerges, making Ross pay for his sins and trying to always be 3 steps ahead of everyone else. For its merits, Anthony Mackie is great in this role. Mackie as Sam has shed all the insecurity and baggage that he had in taking on the title and legacy of Captain America that he did really well in Falcon and Winter Soldier. He has great chemistry with Top Gun Maverick's Danny Ramirez. The cast all around is pretty solid. Harrison Ford, while not giving his best performance in recent memory, that still goes to The Force Awakens, isn't half asleep counting his money like Gus Van Sant in that Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back scene, like he has been in so many other recent movies, like Indy 5. He has some good memories here as the replacement for the late William Hurt. There's also a great cameo from someone that I'm not going to spoil that will lead into the next movie, but it's nice to see the MCU has gone back to pretty tasteful cameos. For a while, they were just throwing characters in there for the sake of throwing them in there. And the movie has some pretty interesting action beats, despite some shaky green screen, particularly a flying fight scene around the Adamantium Island that they set up at the end of Eternals. However, the movie, like I said, has some bad green screen, and it's got some probably terribly edited characters. The biggest one that comes to mind is Sabra, which, look, I get the current geopolitical climate. I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about movies. I can see why Disney made the choice they did to kind of edit around the character, but she's only in the movie for like maybe 3 minutes. And if you're editing that much around her and all you've done to just give her a backstory is a toss-away line that ultimately is pretty badly dubbed, that, oh, she's not Mossad, she's from the Red Room, so she's a former widow. And then they give her one crappy hallway fight scene. I would have just removed the character entirely, or I would have just made a new character. I know Marvel is super hesitant to do it because you got to have the brand recognition, you got to have the IP so that you can go and do it, but you just did a disservice to an actress who ultimately could have done another movie instead of being in this and being used poorly. The biggest waste of talent goes to Giancarlo Esposito, who they used. I thought for the longest time he was going to be William Stryker because the entire point of the island from Eternals is it's the foundation for adamantium. So I'm like, if you make him William Stryker, a black ops mercenary that's hired by the government to mess with Sam Wilson and keep him off of Ross's back while he's doing backwater things. This is before I even saw the movie, so this was all speculation. But I thought rather than be punished when he's captured, he would be rewarded, and Ross would have been like, hey, I'm going to make you in charge of the adamantium military project, which would have been Weapon X. And led to Wolverine before we got Hugh Jackman back. And he's going to do these till he's 80. But Giancarlo is terribly underutilized, and I honestly feel like he was walking off the Mandalorian set and someone begged him for a favor. However, that's not even my biggest issue. My biggest issue is twofold. One, Red Hulk is in all the marketing. From the first poster, all the trailers, all the marketing, all the standings. He's on the goddamn 7-Eleven Slurpee cups. He's in the movie for 6 minutes. And the bigger issue there is the more Hulk characters that get added to the MCU, we now have Ruffalo, Jen from She-Hulk, and Red Hulk. It took Ruffalo/Norton, because this movie heavily ties into the Incredible Hulk, we'll get to that in a second. It took him almost 2.5 phases to kind of get the balance of being Hulk right. He didn't do Smart Hulk, which I hate, until Endgame. He wasn't Hulk at all in Infinity War, but from the Incredible Hulk, the first Avengers, And even parts of Age of Ultron, he doesn't really have it fully locked down. Jen has it under control in a week. And she gives her a little monologue about how it's easier for her to do because she has to control her emotions so much more being female. And it works within the context. Ross has one fight scene. He is the Hulk, not even 6 minutes. He kicks Sam's ass for a little bit. He is in a location that is familiar to him, and he is able to calm down and control the Hulk. This just makes Bruce look like a bitch. He ultimately couldn't do what other people are able to do in a third of the time. But my biggest issue is they brought back Tim Blake Nelson as the leader. This has been hinted at since The Incredible Hulk and dropped, and they really don't do anything with them. My biggest interpretation of the leader was the Earth's Mightiest Hero cartoon that came out around the time the first Avengers came out. And it was an amazing cartoon. It was like Marvel's version of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And he did a miniseries called Gamma World where he infects everyone and they all become Hulks except for Hawkeye and Hulk. And that's probably why I like it as much as I do, because Hawkeye's awesome. They wasted Tim Blake Nelson. He just knows what's going to happen before things do, and the first time that things don't go to plan, he gets himself captured so that he can set up a post-credit scene where he tells us as the audience things we already know, but I guess Sam doesn't know, and it gives him a reason to rebuild the Avengers because we only have 2 more movies before we got to go into Doomsday and try to wrap up this whole multiverse thing. Ultimately, when I left this movie, I thought this basically could have been season 2 of Falcon and Winter Soldier, although at this point it would have been Captain America and the Falcon, because Bucky's now in Congress, if you saw the new Thunderbolt trailer. The problem of that is, while people complained that Falcon and Winter Soldier was bloated because it was 6 episodes, condensing it down to a 2-hour movie hurts it more than it helps it, and that is what took it out for me. The awkward pacing and wrapping things up in a neat bow in 2 hours didn't work for me. That crunch runtime hurts it to the point where I got to give this one a 3 out of 5. What did you all think of Captain America Brave New World? If you liked it, if you hated it, what are your MCU rankings? Put all of that below in the comments. I do read the comments. I respond to the comments when you guys comment on it, as long as they're, positive. If you just tell me that I suck at this and I don't want to waste my time, you tell me I suck at it, tell me how I can do better. That's how things improve. But that is it for me right now. I will see you guys next week where I have another review. Have a good one.